Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another edition of the 5 Points Fridays, but it's not on a Friday, it's on a Thursday. So, with that being said, I did that because we have some very special guests today that I definitely wanted to get in. We have, first off, we have one of my new, really, really good friends. One of the guys who, in my opinion, is like the king, one of the kings of Twitter Spaces, who really got this whole OU thing going. A dis I did. Is it disc golf
Yes, disc
legend?
golf.
Yeah, disc golf legend, right? Andrew Smith at Sooner Soup Guy. Andrew, what's up,
What's going on, man? I wouldn't go so far as to say disc golf legend,
man? No, man,
but
I'm
no,
I'm
I
glad to
do
have
play.
I'm glad to have you on the show. I thought this would be a perfect show to bring Andrew on tonight, simply because we got we got some things to talk about with OU, but we have Mr. Adrian Broadus coming on with us soon, and he's going to talk about UTEP. Adrian Broadus is the host of Minor Talk, a show that I think he hosts on 600 ESPN radio. So we have a guy who's going to fill us in about this matchup and help us preview that OU UTEP game that's coming up here in a few weeks. So that'll be coming soon. He'll be on here soon. But let's go ahead and start it off. Andrew, what's going on with the boys in fall camp? It seems like to me that it's confirming what I already believed in my heart, which is the coaching staff is pleasantly surprised with the amount of talent and the amount of depth that's on this team. For better,
Yeah,
for
I mean that
worse,
sounds
go
about
ahead.
right. I mean the media as well. Like I'm hearing, Teddy talk a lot about it, and Brandon Drum and Parker Thune reporting good things. So the the good news out of fall camp is far outweighing the not so good news. So there's still a lot of positives to be had, and depth is something that we felt like we've not had in a lot of places, and we're having that in
Mhm.
spades. Now, there's a couple spots that are like maybe a little questionable as far as depth, and some pretty big spots, but prayers that we don't have to deal with that at all this year. That we'll be healthy and everything will go smoothly. So, but man, like the talent level, my buddy Jake did the math. Like with the talent that left, after our previous coach left, and the talent they brought in through the transfer portal and the incoming classes, we actually have more talent than we had before.
Mhm.
So, as far as the recruiting rankings and all that, so it's really exciting, and knowing that we've got coaches that are going to be putting them in positions for success.
Mhm.
And that's something that we haven't really seen, especially on the defensive side of the ball, in the last couple of years. So there's a lot of things to be excited about for sure.
So speaking about the defensive side of the ball, now I talked to my aunt today and talked to some other people as well. So one of the things I want to get clear out here. Look, we love Danny Stutzman. I think the world of Danny
Yes,
Stutzman.
Sam.
But I will say this right here: a guy like Aguayo has a really, really high ceiling in a defense like this, especially under the tutelage of a coach like Ted Roof and a Brent Venables at that linebacker position. That's an interesting position because although we had the talent last year, we didn't always get the production that I believe that we wanted, or at least what we wanted to see as fans out of that linebacking course. So I'm definitely interested to see because there's so many guys that you can throw in there, and there are guys who have had reps, but there's also some young guys on the team now, Kanik especially, who seems like they're vying for either a lot of playing time or potentially a starting role. What do you think about that linebacking core, Andrew?
I think the linebacker core is extremely deep. Um, and there's, with Aguabu specifically, we didn't know what they were going to do with him, right? So there was a lot of questions surrounding Aguabu, and fair questions, because and then he dropped 20 pounds, and we still didn't know where they were going to put him. Well, it turns out they're putting him at Mike, and competing with Stutzman. Well, all that's going to do is create insane competitiveness in camp to see who's
Mhm.
going to win the job. And then when one guy needs to come off the field for a breather, the fall off, the drop off between the one and the two is minimal at best.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see that. It sucks that they're not in different positions. We won't get to see them on the field at the same time very much because we
Mhm.
were like, me and a couple of friends were hoping that they would move Guebu to like the Sam linebacker, for example, like D White at the will, Stutzman at the Mike, and Guebu at the Sam. It doesn't
Mhm.
seem like that's going to happen, at least right now. So,
Mhm.
um, lots of things to be excited about. And you mentioned Kanik. I'm interested to see what they're going to do with him because I think a lot of people assumed that he was going to be a cheetah.
Uh-huh.
It sounds like he's getting a lot of work at linebacker.
Yeah.
Now, I think he is getting some reps at cheetah and preparing to be able to be versatile and used over there if they need some size in the cheetah role for whatever look they're giving.
Yeah.
Um, but it sounds like Harrington and Jaden Rowe are kind of taking over that cheetah role, which
Mukes. Mooks.
and Mukes is just, oh my god, you see that photo from the weigh in, like goodness gracious. So there's a lot of things, versatility. Um, some guys they're stretching and having them do different things. Like Harrington has learned, I think safety, nickel, and the cheetah. And there's other guys like Billy Bowman that are like, no, you do this one thing
Yeah.
because you were asked to do too much last year. So we want to make sure that you're in a position to be successful. So the the depth that we've got allows flexibility in some cases,
Mhm.
as well as competitiveness, and that competitiveness because we know that we've had some dudes on our defense in the past, right?
Yeah.
So, like, clearly some guys are in the NFL and got drafted and whatnot. So there's skill there, but the drop off between the 1 and the 2 was drastic, especially in the secondary. So, looking forward to having the difference between the 1s, 2s, and sometimes even the 3s.
Mhm.
Like at corner, I know we're really deep at corner this year, which is fantastic. So,
So I
a lot
think one of the things that I would point out that I'm definitely excited about it is the defensive side of the ball. With the linebacking core, I think that we're deep. I think that we're kind of we're experienced, but we're still kind of young. We have some guys that are kind of unproven, but it's not really a wait and see approach about them. I think that we will be fine. I think that you have guys who can go in there and play their role and play. And here's the thing: don't count it out that you don't see Stutzman and Aguayu on the field because of the scheme and the concept. Because obviously, we both know this defense is going to be multiple in so many different ways. It's going to show you a variety of things. So, don't be surprised if if you guys see a guy like Marcus Stripling pop out there and he's playing a little bit of linebacker on the on the edge, or he's got his hands down on the ground, in technique or whatnot. So I think it's interesting to see that. Interesting point, just like Jimmy said, as far as a guy that you hear a lot about in camp just cutting up is Harrington. And to be honest with you, when you watch some of his film back at his JUCO or whatnot, you look at him and you say, okay, so maybe he's not really just a super super fast guy, but he's a physical guy, but he's a guy who can also go make really athletic plays. And he's somebody that, I mean, I'm not gonna say Richard Sherman, but he's somebody that you would think that has that play style that would go in like the Legion of Boom up there in Seattle, right? So with the intangibles and all the athleticism that he has, I think that's a great position for him. I think that you have a guy like Mooks, Harrington that you're excited about, and then you have kind of your fail safe with Ryan Broyles as well, or not Ryan Broyles, but with Justin Broyles. Basically having him there is kind of like your fail safe because I mean he's the guy who's gonna be able to make the right plays because he's played so much and he's an upperclassman. However, when you look at just the ceiling for the other guys, you're like, man, the talent is undeniable there.
Well, and you mentioned Broyles. I know that's a name not a lot of people want to see,
Yeah.
on the field. But like, if you're going to say trust his coaching staff, and they're the ones raving about a kid, maybe it was just him being in a bad position and being, um, not set up for success, right?
Hmm.
So like imagine, and also too, like the thing that they've said, like regardless how much he sees the field, he's been an incredible leader. So he's going to have a significant impact on this team one way or the other,
Hmm.
and he is going to see significant minutes. Um, but really excited to see what kind of a jump that he's able to make because I think he's playing safety most of the time, but also mixing in maybe at the cheetah as well. But
Yeah.
I think mostly safety. I think he's the in the two deep behind Key, if I'm not mistaken.
So yeah, no, I agree with you. So I think one of the things that we could talk about too, just kind of going through, we're talking about the back end of defense. I mean, obviously, I think everybody is really excited to see what this the safety position is going to look like with Key Lawrence and Billy Bowman back there. We're going to be athletic. We're going to be I think I want to say faster, but at the same time, we can't discredit what Pat Fields and Trouble were able to do back there last year. I mean, they for those past 2 years, they provide continuity and just consistency in different spots or whatnot. Sometimes you're like, I wish I could see a little bit more, but at the same time, I think the guys behind them, and Key Lawrence and Billy Bowman, especially telling them, hey, you just need to focus on this position. You just need to focus on this right here. That's going to be great. And I mean, that's another point. I thought that was a good point that you made about Justin Broles as well. I mean, they asked him to do a bunch of things last year. Uh, he came in, I believe, out of high school. Wasn't he a safety? Wasn't he a safety coming out of high school?
I'll
Four-star
be honest,
athlete.
like I wasn't this deep at that point
Yeah,
in time.
nah, you're
I was
good. You're
really
good.
I was more into game day and like
Yeah.
the kind of I watched every game. I kind of knew a lot of the players, but as far as like incoming and the young guys and all that stuff, I
But
had no idea about by that point.
But either way, I think that you saw. I mean, just go back to Woody Washington his freshman year. They had him playing safety in the LSU game. So, but one of the let's go to the position of interest on really both sides of the ball. Let's go to the trenches. Defensive line wise, you're hearing a lot. You're hearing especially um, it seems like Venables and really the whole defensive staff are really pleased with the progress that Redmond has been able to make. And so uh there we go. Yeah. Bros
Yeah, as
play.
far as Redmond goes, they've made comments that like his focus is different.
Mhm.
And they've mentioned that him having a kiddo has changed a lot of that. Like he's recognizing that he's a provider for a family now, and that he has to kind of put the head down and grind and go to work because this is ultimately what's going to turn into his job. So
Yeah.
um, I know that's a positive. They've talked a lot about Redmond. They've talked a lot about Jeffrey Johnson. I saw a report the other day that if he was on the field, the offense was not running the football. Um, they keep raving about Kelvin Gilliam. um,
Mhm.
it's so funny because like and this is a great thing about this staff, right? The positivity, the way they build kids up with positivity
Mhm.
is refreshing. We've all, those of us who played sports, we've all played for that coach that just sits there and yells and yells and yells and yells and has their favorites, and those are the only ones they talk about. Like there was one point somebody asked Brent a question. He goes, "I don't want to answer that because then it's going to downplay all the hard work everybody else has done." And it's not, and it's not in a way of, I don't want to build someone up. It's like, I don't want to tear someone down,
Mhm.
and like, there's a rule on the coaching staff, no cursing at players, right? Like, so just the way they speak to the student athletes and the way they love them and the way they coach them, but yet hold them to an extremely high standard has been really refreshing.
No,
But
oh, I was
oh
just
yeah,
gonna
it's just like going to continue with the defensive line. I mean, but that being said, that kind of
yeah.
leads into we've heard about almost every single dude on the defensive line as a whole, and seen them take significant jumps. You hear about. I mean, I think the only one I haven't really heard about a whole lot is Isaiah Coe, if I'm being honest with you.
Well, I heard about Isaiah Coe, and they say Isaiah Coe is getting it on. They said him and Jeffrey Johnson are actually splitting time. They say they both bring something different to the
There
table.
you go. There
Yeah,
you go. I
and
mean,
so you're hearing
Kelly. I think is it Jordan Kelly.
Kelly
On
and Roberson, they're splitting time because right now I think Redmond's kind of out with a slight concussion, so
yeah.
they're splitting time at the one, and then also they're raving about Josh Ellison as well. They're saying that
Ellison.
Josh Ellison can he could play either DT
And that we haven't even
position.
touched the edges yet, like the
Yeah.
defensive ends. Like you got Stripling, Grimes, Downs, Lualu. Like
Mhm.
Grayson Halton has been making strides. Been making some noise in practice the last couple of days. They said the game's slowing down for him, according to Drum, so that
Now,
he's starting to have a better understanding of what they're asking of him.
mhm.
So it's been, man,
but
there's
you
so much positive stuff.
but you look at the edge, and a lot, I know Gabe and Teddy, and a lot of people are really high strong. They're really bullish on R. Mason Thompson as well. So Thomas, excuse me. So that's another kid that you got to look out for. I think that this is the year that I look for that defensive line to be stout, to be strong, and to bully people. That's really what I want to see, simply because one of the problems that I had with the defensive line last year is that if you go to the Tulane game, if you go to the Nebraska game, West Virginia game, if you go to the, there's a whole bunch of games that you can name, but those games in particular, we got our ass kicked in that. Because, the blueprint to beat us was, hey, look, this is what you.
Kansas kicked our asses in the trenches.
Kansas kicked our asses in the trenches, and that was one of the problems because literally they're running the ball and picking up 2 yards, 4 yards here, and then they're picking up another 3 yards, and they're saying, okay, well, we're, my math probably doesn't add up right, but nevertheless, you're saying, okay, now they're on 4th and 1 and all the rest of that. Like, we can't stop the run, and then they're running slants, they're running little short intermediate routes just to keep us on the field. Defense is getting tired. We're rotating every 2 minutes, and it was just a lot.
The tackling, I think that's one thing that people want to just simply see as better is tackling, right? Because it'd be 4th and 18, and they'd run a bubble screen and make it because we can't tackle. And then, but yeah, like the defensive side, I think is going to be stout. I think stout's a great word.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people are expecting bully ball to be immediate. And with an aggressive type defense, broken plays are going to occur. People are going to score against this defense, right? So that's okay as long as I agree with the stunt schemes. That's okay as long as we're keeping the ball in front of us and whatnot. Broken plays are going to happen as long as it's not a constant problem. That's just the way football goes. Now, to talk to the comment there about the stunt scheme, I don't know if everybody knows this, but I've talked to some high school coaches that were at a Baylor high school coaches camp, and Baylor was using Grinch's stunning scheme as an example and laughing about it. It was so clear and obvious about what they were going to do for game planning. It was literally too easy. They had zero problem with all, and it was a joke.
Yeah. It was too much twisting and stuff. I think Hiker and Lehman broke it down best. When they were like, it's just way too much twisting and stunning. Because you should be able to just beat your man in mano a mano. We're sitting here and we're OU guys. So we think that, hey, we have a superior team, we have a better talent, but you're twisting and stunning and doing a lot of that, and then you're asking, Asamoah has the speed, but not necessarily a Guebu at 260, 270. You know what I'm saying? To come off and get home. And that's what we had a problem with last year. You didn't really see that until towards kind of the end of the year, in bits and pieces of us being able to get home. The only game really I could think of that we were able to get home an awful lot, well, 2 games, was Iowa State and probably Oregon. And take that for what it's worth. But
the problem is that it didn't continue happening for the whole game at Iowa State.
Mm-hmm.
And now we know that sometimes Lincoln decided to tell the DC how to play defense. And that whole just prevent defense thing. I was talking to somebody the other day, and you guys know that Lincoln told Stoops to play prevent defense in the second half against Georgia in the Rose Bowl. I'm sorry, what now? So people like to blame a lot of stuff on Mike Stoops. I'm sorry. I saw the thing about Calipari and Mark Stoops today, so my mind was on Mark Stoops. But yeah, there's a lot of people. Now, granted, wasn't it great? No, but not all of it was his fault. So
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's the thing is just, a guy like Billy Bowman, he looked great to start, then he kind of just tapered off a little bit simply because just he was being asked to do something that he hadn't. Hey, I mean, he was playing corner. He's a safety athlete at that, safety slash slot receiver, however you want to do it. But
oh, he was
that just
great
wasn't
at
his
the nickel.
position
The
yet.
first couple games, he was phenomenal at the nickelback. And
Mhm.
then the corners went down, so they just had to put somebody there. It was like, well, he's playing really well, so let's try him over there. And it's just like, oh no.
And I agree with what Stubby says. That was going to be my next point. People, please don't take this and run with it. Look, for what Riley was able to do here in those 7 8 years or whatever, it was incredible. It was great. We had our highs, we had our lows, but we had a lot of great moments and fun, especially picking at Texas about all the success we were able to have. And then what Alex Grinch was able to get, I will never forget the Houston game. When I went that first game that he was coaching, I went to the Houston game, and just the excitement around that defense, the way they were flying around the ball. Gosh, what was the quarterback's name? He went to Miami, transferred to Miami afterwards, but
Oh, Derek King.
yes, Derek King, yeah. Just the way they were able to contain him and keep him locked up, and just, I mean, just the excitement. Like, it was so much excitement around that. The crowd was going crazy. That first drive, when we went on defense and then we got that 4 and out, I mean, literally the crowd was just going
Oh, we were
crazy. Like,
pumped. Everybody
I
was
will,
pumped.
I will never
Well, and
forget
some of
that
it is like
moment.
the difference, and again, like so, the challenge is that like so we learned this at the Senior Bowl with IT and Perion from what they were getting back, the feedback they were getting during the game, even from coaches, is like stunts are made for people with less talent.
Hmm.
Now, does that mean you don't stunt ever just to like surprise them and kind of like get a little bit of something different? No, right? That's going to happen. But to stunt as often as they did was because Grinch was accustomed to coaching with inferior talent. So you think about like he was a co-defensive coordinator at Ohio State, so it wasn't his show, right?
Hmm.
But Washington State was his show. Like this type of defense that he tried to run at Washington State here that he ran at Washington State had immense success there was because most games he played, he had inferior athletes and he had to do something. So he's very good at that. So I'm not trying to say he's a bad defensive coordinator or whatever. Just like he
Hmm.
has to adjust to the talent he has. And that's something that I know we're all very excited about Venables is because he's very good at adjusting to what he has personnel wise.
I would I'm gonna say this right here. Andrew says it like it is. That boy said it fair. You said it fair. He just had lesser talent. But I mean, at Washington State, let's just think about it. The recruiting pools that you're getting, like, everybody gets what you're saying. I'm just teasing you, but no, I mean, I agree with it. I mean, I don't know. You just wish it would have worked out, especially last year with the amount of talent and just the buzz around that side of the ball, knowing that we had Spencer Rattler, we had Caleb Williams, what that team could have or
I
should have actually
I
accomplished.
had last year circled for 2 seasons.
Yeah, I think everybody
Two
did.
seasons before, I was looking at like I was starting to kind of get into like the recruiting and all that stuff, and I was like, I had last year circled. I was like, that's the year we can win a national championship.
Yeah.
And to not even make a Big 12 championship game, man,
I
that's rough.
so we started that with the defensive side of the ball, and we went to the defense side of the trenches. So let's go to the offensive side of the trenches. I'm hearing great things. I mean, look, I'm gonna sit here and just say, yeah, I'm hearing great things about everybody, but I'm really am literally hearing great things about the offensive line. It seems
I
like
think
with this.
Teddy said today on the radio that the coaching staff believes the offensive line is the best unit on the whole field.
Mhm. And that's
That's,
huge, and
that's
that's
something that we
huge.
haven't had since Schmitty left, or since I
Mhm.
guess the year after Schmitty left. So the year that we won the offensive line award, um, best offensive line in the country. The Joe Moore Award, I think, what it was. But since that
Mhm.
year, we've had poor offensive line play, and it's gotten progressively worse every single year. Now, does that mean we don't have dudes on the roster? No,
Mhm.
because Bill Bedenbaugh's Bill Bedenbaugh. He's going to be able to recruit offensive talent. So we have the guys on the roster, and I personally believe, like, so for me, I believe the main reason for the offensive line problem was the strength and conditioning.
Mhm.
After the Iowa State game, I went to dinner with JP and Trav and a couple other people, and I was talking to JP, and I was like, I'm not typically one to call for someone's jobs, but we need a new strength and conditioning coordinator because our offensive linemen cannot move anyone.
Mhm.
But
That was something. That's
people
something.
movers, that's what they are. People
That's
movers.
something. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just making a comment. They're people movers. Offensive linemen should be people movers.
It was a whisper in the wind that I didn't really pay attention to all that much, but after some time, and I'm not even going to mention Wiley with it. I'm just going to say, just we just had poor offensive line, and it's not totally on Wiley because at the end of the day, hey, players got to go play and make plays. But two, there was some contention. Excuse me, there were some differences in opinion as to who should start, who should be playing, what kind of roles, all the rest of that. Um, and I
Yep.
mean, the same thing that you could say about with Baylor with the twisting and stunning, how they would, game plan for it is pretty much the same thing that you could say for Lincoln Riley last year. It just seemed like he was so damn set on, I'm going to run my GT pool, my GT counter, all the rest of that stuff. I'm going to do that. I'm
I
going to
I
do it.
haven't. I would be curious
Uh-huh.
because I want to know whether it was people figured out the scheme and schemed
Hmm.
for it, or was it the strength and conditioning and they were just incapable of running it, or a little bit of both. My guess is probably a little bit of both because
Hmm.
we saw for multiple seasons the GG counter worked to perfection and everybody knew it was coming. But the offensive line were just so strong that
Hmm.
they just moved the people out of the way, right? So I would be curious if given another Schmidt offensive line that the GT counter like scheme. Now I know a lot of people are not thrilled with that. I just want to know, was
Hmm.
it that which was the problem? It's really what I'm curious about. And we're not going to run it here. Totally fine. So it's going to be a lot of fun to run the ball. I mean, I
I
don't know, a lot
think
of
I was just going to just jump in and just say I think one of the key differences that a lot of people are pointing out is just the fact that now Levy's offense can be complicated because there's a lot of things that he's asking you to do, but the scheme for the offensive line is more simplified. It's more simple. It's just a lot more simple than what I guess you would be asked in the Lincoln Riley offense. Because if you really look at the Lincoln Riley offense, then JD Piquel, guys, check out his content. That guy always breaks stuff down. But he had a video early on where he broke down that Lincoln Riley offense, where he just showed how, like, basically he's putting a lot of stress on the safeties because he's asking you to do a lot. He's like, hey, look, either you're going to cover this deep route. I'm going to have two guys line up. They're going to both run up right down the seam. I'm going to have one guy do a deep corner, but you're not going to know. And it's an option on top of that. And then the other guy is Mims in the slot. He's running a deep route. What are you going to do? So he's putting a lot of stress how he's lining guys up and how he's scheming them open. But the offensive line has to buy time for that. And we just didn't get that with the shuffle of guys that we had last year with Robinson on the outside. And you thought that, hey, that would be great. But, you're thinking that, yeah, he probably should have stayed in the interior.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just excited for Smash Mouth football again. So, um, yeah, I mean, so I think Levy's been an offensive coordinator for 6 years, I believe.
Yeah.
The only year he has not averaged 200 yards a game on the ground was 1 year, and it was 199. So I know, really excited to see us run the football.
Hmm.
We've got very good talent. I know they're really, really excited about the talent they have in the wide receiver room. And it's very, very deep. There's guys like that are like some of the young freshmen are making severe pushes to see some playing time this year. So I'm
Let's
curious, kind of multi thing. So I'm curious how many kids end up playing in 4 games and get a red shirt. And then the other thing I'm curious about with the scheme of Levy, Bryle's kind of tree of coaches as far as like the offensive scheme sometimes struggle in the red zone because it's so spread out, and when the field gets shorter, they sometimes struggle to punch it in. So I'm curious how Levy is able to make some adjustments now that he's got his own system, and he can kind of have a Schmitty built offensive line, a stable of running backs. So I'm curious to see how we perform in the red zone this year.
No, for sure. So, guys, we're going to shift back to OU news, but we're going to welcome and introduce Adrian Broadus with us. So hopefully, I'm saying that correct. Like I said, guys, he's a radio personality, host of Minor Talk, and he's a part of 600 ESPN Radio. So definitely check him out if you got some time. It looks like he has a lot of content. So, Adrian, what's up, man? We've been talking on Twitter, but it's great to have you on. What's up?
Great to be here, you all. Thanks so much for having me. I'm real excited about talking some UTEP football here against OU. I'm excited that the season's right around the corner here.
No, for sure. So
let's know if we can taste it.
So I had to do my research. I can't bring you on without doing my research and actually looking at UTEP and seeing, because quite frankly, I think you guys may have finished 7-5, 8-5 last year, which.
Right, they finished 7-6, first winning season in 7 years at UTEP. So it's a big deal, right? I mean, usually we're talking about UTEP trying to get to that point, trying to get to a winning season, or just trying to not be at the basement of Conference USA. And last year was a breath of fresh air for a lot of Miner fans.
So yeah, that's what I was going to say, because UTSA and UTEP, I mean, that was the big matchup. Everybody was kind of upset that wasn't the the game day game. The game day didn't go there. That I think you guys were 6-2 at that time, and they were like 8-0. I want to say UTSA. And so
it was a highly contentious. I mean, like, the atmosphere was crazy going into that one. A lot of hype, a lot of excitement around that game. UTSA is kind of the quote unquote rivals in Conference USA, not really rivals. Same kind of colors right there. Fans don't really have that kind of rivalry, appeal. UTEP's rival is New Mexico State, so it's like 45 minutes away from El Paso. That's Las Cruces. They would, UTSA is kind of like that rivalry in Conference USA, but it didn't live up to the hype. But UTSA came into the Sun Bowl, and they wiped UTEP in that game. And I feel like for the Miners, it's about taking that next step, right? Like, they got to the step where they can beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. Now it's about getting to that next step where they can overcome that and then beat the teams that they maybe shouldn't, necessarily beat on paper.
So when I watch UTEP, and Andrew, if you got anything, just chime in. But when I watched UTEP, I watched some of the highlights or whatnot, and I saw that you guys, I won't say that you guys ran a similar offense to what we ran last year on the Lincoln, but I will say it's finesse at times, but it's, hey, we want to be physical with you, and we want to hit you in the mouth. Like, you guys aren't afraid to run the ball. A lot of screens, running back screens, a couple of jailbreak screens. There's a lot of screens in the offense, so there's some deception there. But I mean, it was a lot out there that I like to see. So just tell us about your team. Like, who's returning? And I can't remember the quarterback's name. I remember number 12. I'm not sure if he was a senior last year or if he's returning. But I mean, from what I saw from him, it looked like he was pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's Gavin Hardison, who is returning at the gunslinger position. You hit the nail on the head, and I'll go back to some Big 12 kind of comparison. So Dana Dimmel, head coach of UTEP, he comes from Kansas State, so he's a Bill Snyder disciple right there, and he takes a lot of that kind of mentality, the philosophy behind Kansas State, the way that they built that program. That's where you kind of see what UTEP can really do. I kind of I relate the Gavin Hardison experience to a pocket passing quarterback who is going to try to throw down the field big time. If you look at his completion percentage, that's where you might be turned off from a quarterback like him. You might say, wow, he's completing less than 60% of his passes. This is really, what's going on there. And you might even look at his turnovers that he's had, over the past couple seasons, whether it's fumbles or interceptions. But I think that having consistency at the quarterback position is bigger than all those things. That trumps everything right there for the Miners, because they just needed a guy who could come in year after year and be their leader. And I think actually Gavin Hardison proved last year that he can be that guy to take a step forward. Like last season, throwing for as many passing yards as he did. I know he didn't have the best touchdown to interception ratio that you might want, but he became a leader. And I think that's what you want out of a quarterback, where you're basically trying to establish a culture in a traditionally losing program and trying to turn it into a winner. Now this season, expectations are high on Gavin Hardison. This is an offense that likes to be balanced, but they'll go one way or the other, and they'll kind of commit to it when it's all said and done in a game. So, for example, the first 7 games of last season, the Miners love to be very balanced. They like to run with their 2 running backs in both Deion Hankins and Ronald Awatt. And then injuries happen on the offensive side of the ball. They weren't as physical up front, running the football. So when it came to the passing game, they really relied on standouts like Jacob Cowing and Justin Garrett last year to be those deep ball, targets. And when you see Gavin Hardison throw, a lot of those passes are deep balls. They're 15 yards plus, and that's why you might see that completion percentage be a little bit lower than where you might want it to be. So Gavin Hardison, pocket passing quarterback. They're going to run a balanced attack. Deion Hankins is going to probably be your touchdown back, and Ronald Awatt's going to be the guy who rushes for a lot of those things, a lot of yards on the offensive side of the ball. And it's going to be up to the newcomers at the wide receiver position to see how much they can step up this season and try to repeat last year's successful finish.
So I'm gonna pass this over to Andrew because I want to get his thoughts about this. Now, the Hardison kid, Andrew, I'm telling you, hey, look, he can make the throws, he can make the passes. All right.
I have a hot take about UTEP.
So here's my thing about UTEP before I pass it off to Andrew. And I think just the reason why I'm passing it off is because I think we can agree on this. We learned our lesson last year, the first game of the season against Tulane. That quarterback out there, he took an ass whooping. I mean, they put it on him, but he got up every time and he stood in the pocket. He made the throws that he needed to make. And so we learned our lesson. Now, obviously, we think we're in a better position this year. We think that we're not going to take any team light. We think that we should go out here and we should win this game handily. However, like I said, we learned our lesson thinking was wrong last year. But at the same time, I think it's a great matchup, and you guys are coming off a really good season, and I'm excited about it. So I'll pass it off to Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, he pretty much hit it on the head as far as not taking them lightly. That's for sure. But I have actually a hot take about UTEP. I actually think it's our most difficult non-conference game this year.
Wow, that's very generous. You guys are nice. You guys are nice people. You guys are hyping up UTEP. I love it. I love the support. Miner fans who are watching this, they're gonna love this. They're gonna love hearing you say this. I've just seen it before, guys. Like I've seen UTEP go to Norman and get killed. I've seen UTEP go to Arkansas, get killed early season. Texas, same thing. It's a money game. Let's call it what it is for the Miners. They need this check on their end. And if any of the players heard me saying this, they'd probably use this as poster board material and try to,
as they should,
man. Yeah, as they should, right? And hey, maybe there's a couple instances early on where the Miners kind of hang in and they stand with this OU team at the beginning, and then the Sooners run away with it when it's all said and done. Maybe that's the case. UTEP's defense is probably their bread and butter. So I would say that if anything were to happen in this game, as far as UTEP's success, it has to start on the defensive side of the ball in order to try to think of the unthinkable, right? And say, hey, could they actually go into Norman and scare the Sooners?
Oh, man, and honestly, I expect us to handle the game, as we should. But and there's opportunity there for you guys to do just that, because it's our first game of the season. It's our first game under Coach Venables. Everybody's going to be super pumped up. So like the crowd's going to be insane. Like it should be insane. We're expecting it to be insane. So there could be a little bit of too much juice. And so maybe like an overthrow pick, something like that. So absolutely, there's opportunity there to kind of suck the energy out and make us go, oh no, we've seen this before, right? But it's a long game. I think that, as talented as UTEP is becoming, I don't think they're quite on our level. And like you said, obviously, yes, it's a money game. I've been on the wrong end of those in my college baseball career, so I understand what that's like as a player going in. And it's difficult, it's challenging, but you have to convince yourself you have an opportunity to win. Because what if you do, right? But ultimately, this offense is going to move very, very fast. There's going to be maybe 2 or 3 offenses in the country that are going to move at a higher play per minute pace than we will. So, and defensively, we're really, really excited about Venable's defense coming back. So it should be really fun. It's just going to be exciting to have football back for one, and then Oklahoma football kind of seemingly on its return on our side. But I think, from your perspective, there's definite upside to being able to showcase what you guys are about. And even if you lose and lose big, but you make it interesting for the first quarter, even okay, there's something here, there's some talent here and something to build on.
Oh, I completely agree with that. I think that's a really good point that you made because, look, UTEP doesn't get a lot of nationally televised games. That's the first thing right there. So the immediate thing in my head is recruiting. They can go out and tell people, hey, we are going to have that opportunity to go out and play Power 5 schools like Oklahoma, a national championship contending program like Oklahoma, which is awesome for UTEP standards right there. And I think that's a huge thing to kind of keep into perspective when you look at games like this from the Miners. And another fun fact, just to kind of, I'm not sure if you guys have already talked about this, but UTEP actually played Lincoln Riley. I don't know if we're supposed to say his name or not on this podcast, but they played Lincoln Riley in his first game as the Sooners head coach, and now it's Venables as the first game.
Well, if you want to give that throwback, allow me to give one more.
Okay.
The year that we won a national championship, we also opened with UTEP.
Ooh, okay. There we go. I like it.
And we started a left-handed transfer quarterback.
Oh, all right. There we go.
There's a lot of those similarities, man, from that last national championship season to this year. There's a lot of those. It's one of those statistics can tell the story you want it to tell. You can find a lot of those similarities.
I like that. That's good stuff.
Now, Adrian, we're not going to bring you on the show and just bash you like that. Hopefully that's not what you were thinking. No, I wanted to get you guys spotlight because I really did try to break the film down, just look and see what are these guys running? What are they going to, bring to the table? I didn't know if how you say his name? Hardison?
Yeah, Hardison.
Yeah, I didn't know if Hardison was going to be returning or not, but I said, hey man, he throws a pretty ball. The guy is legit. I think that if you guys are able to get out there, your wide receivers are doing their thing. Do you guys have let's talk about that skill position wise? Obviously, we talked about the running backs, but skill position wise, what do you guys have on that side of the ball? And then defensively, who are some guys that we should look out for during that game?
Yeah. So first off, the weapons. They lost Jacob Cowling, who's going to be a preseason Pac-12 player right there for Arizona. He transferred over there because of his son, left the Miners program. That's a huge loss. That's their best player from last year, and he ended up leaving the program. They also saw their other top receiver, Justin Garrett, graduate. He's on the football staff now, so he's in a different role, obviously. So now you're looking at newcomers at the receiver position. But when you look, before you even look at the newcomers, you have to understand how UTEP operates in terms of recruiting. They were never going to be a top any kind of 247 list or any kind of rivals list as far as their number of stars that they end up getting to UTEP, a number of high school prospects, anything like that, because UTEP prides themselves on junior college transfers. They love to recruit those mid-year guys who could come into spring ball and play immediately in the fall. They have a lot of those guys right now on the defensive side of the ball, and now we're starting to see it trickle in to the offense. They're possibly their number one receiver this year could be Kelly Arcari, who's coming from Tyler junior college. And that Tyler JC has really provided a nice pipeline for UTEP receivers. One of the other receivers actually that I'm real bullish on is Tyron Smith. He's another junior college standout who had a nice season last year. He was,
I heard that name.
Definitely. He had over 375 receiving yards last season and provided a lot of, nice moves for the Miners. He's going to play slot for them, and they love using that slot receiver position. You're returning some veteran players like Walter John Jr., who's a graduate on their team, but one of the guys that I'm really looking at is Jeremiah Ballard, who didn't really get to play last year, has a lot of size coming into this season. It's up to him to really break through in that wide receiver core. And they got a hometown kid at the wide receiver position as well, and Ray Flores. So the talent is there as far as their receivers go. Now, defensively, that's where UTEP is scary. They've got one of the best, if not the best, front sevens in all of Conference USA. Albeit they're pending a waiver, an NCAA waiver for one of their standout linebackers in Breon Hayward. They run a 4-3 defense. You're going to get a lot of blitz and pressure from your two edge rushers and the standout in Praise Amehule, who is their edge rusher and probably, they're kind of like their NFL prospect down the line. That's kind of their somebody that you might keep on your radar. Jadrian Taylor is rushing it on the other side, and then the two guys up front, and Keenan Stewart and Kelton Moss at the defensive tackle position. Those four guys have all conference, potential, and that's their kind of ceiling right there. I feel like the defense, the front seven, one of the best in Conference USA. Secondary is going to be interesting because they're really almost rebuilding their secondary. They're getting new guys like safety Kobe Hilton out of Louisiana. So he was a transfer from this offseason. He's going to play right away. They have one of the standout corners in all of Conference USA, and Dennis Barnes, who does not get a lot of love. He kind of plays that hybrid nickel corner safety. This year, they might actually throw him at corner because they're lacking a little bit of depth there, and that would allow UTEP to place more guys in their secondary, their safeties, which they kind of have a little bit more depth on. I like Justin Prince in their secondary. I like guys like Tyrese Knight, who's another linebacker aside from Breon Hayward. So a lot of names on the defense, which is something that we really, never really say at UTEP.
So question, with the liking the blitz as much as they do you foresee with the potential pace that we're going to play with, is that going to cause some problems with them being gassed?
UTEP likes to rotate a lot. They will rotate their twos. They feel confident in their depth. I would say if Oklahoma is able to air the ball, especially deep, and really expose the inexperience that the secondary has with UTEP, that's the key. That's the way that OU scores all the points. UTEP will be able to throw in their twos at the defensive line, and they'll be able to push the line pretty nicely. But when it comes to that pass protection, even though Praise Amehule and Jadrian Taylor are those standouts at the edge, they only combined for 12 sacks last year, and they would tell you that's not good to their standards, and they want to get way more this season. So that's one of the big things that I'm looking at this year. How can that defensive line generate more sacks? I mean, maybe even more turnovers, but the biggest key for OU will be exposing that secondary, which just lacks experience right now.
Well, that's what I was saying, because with the pace of play, they may not be able to rotate. So that's going to be interesting to see how they're able to kind of circumvent that.
No, I'm really, yeah, you got me hype about this game for sure. And I think you got everybody hype about this game. So outside of that, with the inexperience in the secondary, how do you see UTEP matching up against us? What are your concerns as far as just this game number one of the season?
So UTEP, this is interesting. UTEP has a 0-week game against North Texas. I'm concerned that they'll kind of throw the kitchen sink at North Texas to try to win a conference game that's early into the year, and all the film will be out, and OU's got it done before they even go to Norman. So that's my biggest concern right there, just kind of showing a little bit too much. I mean, Dana Dimmel, head coach of the Miners, has been around for a long time. So, he understands what it takes to win these kinds of games. I just don't think that the program historically understands what it takes to win in a Power 5 game. And, UTEP is I don't have the numbers in front of me, but when it comes to playing Power 5 schools, I think the last win that they've had, comes well beyond 50 years. It hasn't really happened in football. It happens from time to time in basketball at UTEP, but not in football. It doesn't happen where they upset or win in Power 5 situations.
Mm-hmm. So you're a Miner fan. We get it. We know that. Let's see. Are you a football fan? You're a college football fan, correct? Like
Yeah,
you love college
definitely.
football just like that. All right.
I've tried to unplug the fandom with the Miner side of things because gotta be a little partial on this show. But hey, we host a fan show where we get a lot of passionate people who call in all the time. So those are the Miner diehards. But yeah, definitely love college football. Love watching it day to day for sure.
So come on over to our side and just talk with us and chime in for a little bit. Let's look outside of OU for a second before we go back to OU here in a little bit, Andrew. Big 12 outlook. So obviously, Andrew and I think the sky's the limit for the Sooners. But looking around the Big 12, and I'll start with you, Adrian. What are your thoughts about the Big 12? Who presents the biggest danger to OU this year?
Okay, well, I can't say Texas, right? Well, so,
no.
but
you can if that's your opinion. I mean, you'd be wrong.
I think we've had a lot of hype, right? Like the offseason, we've had a lot of hype seeing all the Texas stuff, and you could take it for what it's worth, but I'm scared of Baylor. I'm looking at that Baylor team. Aranda has really revamped that group in a really strong way. I think they're going to be coming out guns blazing. I think this might be the year that they kind of put everything together. I really like what they have on, both sides. In the trenches with Baylor is where they're going to win, both their offensive line and their defensive line. I really like what Aranda has really built in that program, and that would be that team that I'd be a little worried. And Oklahoma State, too. I feel like those are the two teams right there that you kind of look at in the Big 12 aside from the Sooners. And you got to put those three teams probably in the upper echelon right there. And if you want to call Texas a dark horse team, if you want to call maybe Kansas State is a sneaky team right there in the Big 12, sure. But I'm still looking at Baylor, Oklahoma State, and OU as the top three in that conference.
Andrew, the floor is yours. So I like Baylor. There's questions there. There's a lot. They lost a lot, specifically on the defense. But I believe they upgraded at quarterback, and that's no small thing. Now there's questions, sure, but the thing is for me, I do trust Aranda. I think he's going to have the defense at least solid, right? Even if it's not world beating, what we've seen from him in the past, it's going to be solid. Because first of all, they're just going to be well coached. Oklahoma State, I'm not high on. I think their ceiling is 9-3, because they lost so much on the defense, and then they lost their defensive coordinator. Their offense is going to be the same, maybe worse.
You don't like Sanders?
I don't trust Sanders as far as I can throw him. But so I don't think Oklahoma State's really going to be like. Are they going to be maybe in the conversation earlier in the year to maybe like, okay, we'll see what happens? Sure, potentially, but I think they probably end up third or fourth in the Big 12. Which honestly, after the team that they had, how old their team was last season, to go 8-4, 9-3, it's still not terrible at all. Like in a rebuilding year, absolutely, that's totally fine. Kansas State's interesting because not a lot of people are big fans of Adrian Martinez, but he's in a system that suits him. And he's got a plus running back, and they love to give him the ball and dump it off to him. So as long as he doesn't turn the ball over, and they're going to have a really solid defense, I like what they're doing over there. West Virginia is interesting. I think West Virginia is going to challenge some people, but I don't think they're going to win a ton of games. So
What's
I think they're going to JT Daniels. They got JT Daniels.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think he kind of legitimizes them a little bit, and it's like he has some significant arm talent. So I think he's going to be interesting. Texas, for our game against Texas, you never know what's going to happen because it's Red River. But I mean, I wasn't high on Texas before because I think they have a bad culture. it's extremely poor. You have a player coming out in the media calling out how poor it is, and then you have the head coach saying, well, he's not going to talk to you guys anymore. And then there's so much other stuff behind the scenes that we just know is really, really poor on the Texas side. And then you look at the practice reports, and it just gets a little bit more delicious. But so, yeah, I think probably if I had to pick a team that we're probably going to face in the Big 12 championship game, it's going to be Baylor or Kansas State. And a lot of that, there's a couple of coin flip games for both of them that I think is just going to depend on who wins what. Yeah. So that's kind of where I sit.
So not only that about Kansas State, but we have to – so some of the same things that you said about Hardison, Adrian, I think you can say the same thing. You can say the same for Adrian Martinez. So Adrian Martinez is Adrian Martinez, when he's on his A game, is hard to stop. However, he likes to turn the ball over. But when you just look at all the different things they can scheme up, they may not have the best wide receiving core. But when you think about the attention that a lot of defenses are going to give to Deuce Vaughn and then to the mobile threat that Adrian Martinez is, I think that, that really bodes well for them offensively. And, defensively on that side of the ball, they're going to be stout. That's the word I'm going to keep using. They're going to be stout. They're going to be disciplined. Same thing I would say about Baylor for Baylor's defense, just Baylor overall. Baylor and Kansas State, they're either consistently good or they're consistently bad. There's nothing more, nothing less. So I really think that they're kind of in that mode. And when they're consistently good, they're pretty they're tough. So
Oklahoma upgrading at quarterback, to your point, Chris, they recruit track stars for their skill positions.
Yeah.
They don't recruit football players. They go to the track. Yeah. So like with a better quarterback, they pose a much bigger danger offensively than I think a lot of people are realizing what Baylor's possibilities are this year.
I think that, for all the crap that we give them as well, I'll move on to this team. I mean, Texas is going to be a really talented team at different spots, but for all the questions that they have for us, we have the same questions for them because the secondary is still not shored up. Linebacker-wise, I mean, we know about Overshawn, but we really don't know, other than that, who's going to be playing opposite of him. Ryan Watts, I'm on record for saying he's going to have a great year at corner, but, we don't know who's going to be playing opposite of him. And then defensive line-wise, you're still kind of the same. So offensively, Bijan Robinson, let's just, hats off. He may be the best running back in college football. You're going to have Xavier Worthy. You're going to have Nayor. You're going to have talent there. But can Quinn Ewers live up to the hype? Has Hudson Card taken that next step? Is the offensive line better? So there's some questions there. So I say that because Adrian is our resident expert, and I want to get his opinion on this. Week 3, they play against a team that you're really familiar with that I think could do the impossible. Andrew has already labeled that as an upset game. So I'm going to put you on the spot now. Can UTSA do the impossible in Austin week 3?
No, I'm going to shoot that down. Yeah, no, I'm still Texas is still could still contend for a Big 12 title if things shape up right for them. And I agree with you in terms of some of the things you read from their practices and kind of the culture and stuff. I agree completely there. Like all of that is valid, but you also have to factor in that Texas hype train, right? Because if Texas gets things going, if they start winning games or something like that, then everybody's going to go on the morning shows and say Texas is back, and we're gonna have to hear that all over again. And then everybody, but here's the thing. So this is the Horns Down podcast. Then does that set Texas up for failure, right? Like, does that set them up for a big disappointment? And are fans this patient at Texas, knowing that they've got Sarkisian and they've got this recruiting class with this offensive line that's supposed to be the best in the Big 12, and Bijan Robinson, who actually came through El Paso. He played against one of the El Paso teams. I got a chance to watch him, and I was blown away with him at the high school level. So I knew he would be a standout player at the college level, and he's going to be a future NFL player, at some point and be playing on Sundays. But I really like what that the talent. But every year we like the talent from Texas, right?
Well,
Every year we like what they bring to the table. And I feel like the hype is there. I don't know if they can match that hype. I still think they beat UTSA. I just think that Traylor is good. He's a great coach, but maybe we bought into a little bit too much hype with UTSA from last season.
Well, so I want to go on record. I don't think I said it's an interesting trap game. I don't think I picked it as an upset. but I want to know who's saying that they're going to be the best offensive line in the country, because that's interesting to me. But and here's the thing. I'm never going to say that they don't have talent. They have immense talent. They've had top 5 recruiting classes for the last, I don't know how long, right? So they're very talented, but they're very famous for doing nothing with it. They had 0 draft picks last year. 0. So
right.
the coaching, the culture, the coaching staff, the development, all these things. Now, are their skill position players good enough to win them some games? They probably shouldn't. Yes. And they're going to win some games. I just don't know how many. Now, am I going to pick another 5-7 season for them? No, absolutely not. I don't think they're going to have a losing season. But I don't think realistically they're going to be in contention for the Big 12. They may be 3-4 games in, but by the time you get to halfway through the Big 12 season, I don't think anybody's going to really be talking about Texas.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. It's kind of a boomer bust year, right? For that Longhorns team, they could be 10-2, they could be 7-5. I don't think I'd be surprised either way. I really wouldn't, because just the way that they've turned out in the past couple seasons, we can't have high expectations for the Longhorns. But on the other side, you can't have too much of lower expectations for this group. It's just going to be kind of interesting to see how this season really shakes out for them. Real quick on UTSA again, they have a very, very talented team as well, and they have a great recruiting class. So if UTSA upsets Texas, hey, I'd be really, really surprised by that, and I'd be really interested to see a Conference USA team take down a Big 12 team like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, here's the thing. They're coming off, let's just call it for what it is. They're coming off a loss against Alabama, and they're going to have their sights set. Okay, we start Big 12 play the week after we play UTSA. Texas Tech is going to be a big game because it's going to be hyped, simply because their new coach and kind of just all the buzz that's around that program right now. So with that being said, do they overlook UTSA, and does UTSA come in there and get busy? Because like I said, I watched the UTSA and UTEP game. I watched UTEP in the bowl game. I watched UTEP against a couple other teams, but I definitely watched that game, and I was like, UTSA, I see there's some things out here to like on both sides of the ball. There really is. And UTSA, I was like, that's a respectable team. And there's a reason why they were 8-0 at one point last year. So,
it's prototypical trap game. It's really what it is. It's prototypical trap game. A lot of people are going to be picking them to lose. I don't think I'm going to. Obviously, it depends on the Bama game, whether I that week I maybe pick them to lose that game. But it is definitely a prototypical trap game.
Yeah. And I mean, hey, all the credit to Texas. Look, Adrian, this is one thing that I've said time and time again on my podcast, on other podcasts, other shows. People know this for sure. Look, did I believe that Texas was going to go 5-7 last year? No, but I prayed for it. And prayer is a powerful thing, and it worked. And look, I was happy when they lost 6 in a row. I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is crazy. Are you serious? If Skylar Thompson would have played last year, they would have lost to K-State, and they would have been last in the Big 12. So I was hoping. I was hopeful. But, I'm on record as saying that I think the highest that they can go this year, 9-3. 9-3, ceiling, their floor would be 7-5. So that's how I look around the Big 12. I think that some people are going to come in here and say the Big 12 is wide open. I don't necessarily think that. I think that the Big 12 is top heavy again. I think that Oklahoma State. Look, I get what you're saying. I don't have that much high. I don't hold Spencer Sanders in high regard at all as a quarterback, but at the same time, they had a successful season last year. Let's see if they can do that again with the style of ball that they were trying to play, because I don't think that too many teams are going to be making those mistakes. One of the things that they have the advantage of, I believe, that Texas comes to them. Do they go to Baylor this year, or does Baylor come to them?
I think they're at Texas, though, if I'm not mistaken. No, they're in Texas Stillwater. Now I remember, because I have a great story about Oklahoma State going to Texas last year. But I think you're right. I think they're at Baylor, though, because that's rough, man. To have to go to Oklahoma and Texas. I guess that makes sense. So they get Oklahoma and Texas alternate years at home. That makes sense.
So, Adrian, I'm not sure. Do you need to go for your show, or?
I'm good. I'm good on time.
Okay. Well, let's boogie back. Let's boogie back just a little bit to OU. Let's just pivot back to them. So I know people in here in the chat were talking about the wide receiver core. Andrew, go in on that. You were kind of going in on spill on that.
I'm sorry. What was it?
Oh, the wide receiver core.
Oh, our wide receiver core?
Yes, sir.
I'm really excited about it. I think we've got a really good mix of experience and youth, as well as flooded with talent. So everybody knows what Marvin Mims is capable of. We also are excited to see what a healthy Theo Weiss looks like.
Yeah.
We've got Drake Stoops, who, pretty much torched Texas last year, so we know what he's capable of. You got a couple of transfers that bring a little bit of collegiate experience, and then you've got a couple of really young guys like Jaden Gibson, who's been making big noise, and then Anderson has been making big noise as well. So we're finally getting some length in our receivers. We're getting super tall guys. There's going to be different packaging. And that's the thing. Levy likes to spread the ball around to different receivers, but he at the same time makes sure the guys who need to catch the ball the most catch the ball the most. Mm-hmm. And so just really excited to see how it shakes out. Cause I didn't even mention Jalil Farouk, right? Like we know what he's capable of from what he did in the Oregon game last year, but he's still really young. So I think the experience with Mims, Weiss, Stoops, as well as a couple of transfers that have coming in as sophomores, I'm really, really excited about what this wide receiver room is going to do. And now they're getting coached by a guy who played receiver in the NFL, XFL, and CFL.
Don't forget about Trevon West and Brian Darby. There's so many of them. There's some solid guys out there. No, I'm really excited about the offense. I'm really excited about the wide receiver core. I think one of the things that, if all of us watched Ole Miss last year, I think, like I've said it time and time again, I'm really excited to see, do we have a player that could be used like Dontario Drummond was last year for Ole Miss? I mean, he was all over the field, whether it was jet sweeps, whether he was in the slot, whether he was outside. Levy schemed him up so well to put him in positions to win all those battles. And I mean, it was a beautiful thing to see. I mean, go back to the first game that they had against Louisville. I mean, Dontario Drummond was all over. I mean, he had a great game against them. Go against I believe it was Mississippi State. You watched that game early on. He got him involved early and often. So you think about that and you say, okay, well, that means that Mims should be, involved early and often. But you can't even say that simply because, I mean, we really have a deep wide receiver core. A lot of people have their doubts about our wide receiver core, rightfully so. But I'm telling you now, it's a lot of talent on that field, and you will see it. You saw it, but you just don't want to believe it.
Well, and to that thing, that at the addition of the wide receiver core is a really deep tight end room too.
Yeah.
So Braden Willis, Daniel Parker, Caden Helms is going to get in the mix and well, and he's a really long and fast. He's kind of more that like tight. He's kind of that tight end wide receiver kind of flex, if you will. So there's an extreme depth to be able to show different types of looks. I can't remember. Was it Ian Boyd, I think, that said that Daniel Parker's a terrible blocker? I laughed so hard. But yeah, like the targets that we're going to have, and that's not even like the targets out of the backfield that we're going to have. It's going to be great.
But yeah, and you're just hearing those tea leaves and those notes and everything from practice, the practice reports and everything, and it seems like people are around the program are really bullish on this team. So I'm excited to see what they can do, especially game one against our UTEP brethren. So just to kind of end this on some high notes, let's just talk about some national topics. Adrian, I'll start with you. What games are you most excited about seeing in this first week? Week 0, obviously, I think the game everybody's going to pay the most attention to is Nebraska against Northwestern. I know Andrew, he has his thoughts about the culture up there in Nebraska, but as far as you, what games are you excited to see? Week 0, obviously, and then week 1.
I mean, I always look at the group of 5. Look at where we're at, man. We're at UTEP. I'm looking at group of 5 schools, so I'm looking right up the street. And New Mexico State, they're debuting with the new head coach and Jerry Kill. They're hosting Nevada that first week, so that's a game I'm definitely keeping an eye on. I'm definitely the Florida States play out there. I know that the UNLVs and the UConns of the world, and same with the Utah States, they play for that week 0. I take those games with a grain of salt. I am looking forward to that Charlotte FAU game, Conference USA game. Again, it's a lot of group of 5 games. I'm sure your listeners have already tuned me out at this point, but I guess that the only marquee game that you're going to really find is really that Nebraska Northwestern game. The rest of the games, I mean, hey, I think UTEP will be happy to take as many viewers as they can for that North Texas UTEP kickoff.
Do you guys win that game?
It's a good question. I haven't made the pick. I would definitely say that it's going to be a coin toss, going to be kind of a 50-50 game because UTEP's still uncertain about whether or not they'll get their linebacker and Breon Hayward. And I mean, you can say what you want about one player making all the difference, but they get him in that one. Maybe I feel confident about picking UTEP. They don't get him. Maybe it's a coin toss at that point, but it's going to be a sellout, which is really funny to think about at UTEP. Like they're hyping this game up in a big way. There's only like 7,000 tickets left, and kickoff is not far away, but UTEP has not really sold out a game here in El Paso since the likes of Colt McCoy and Mac Brown come into town and killing the Miners in a 2008 game.
What about week 1? Who you got? What are you excited to see week 1? I think the matchup that I'm excited to see is Notre Dame and Ohio State. Andrew, don't kill me on this one, but I haven't picked a winner yet. I haven't.
So that's going to be a great one. That's going to be a lot of fun. I also am looking forward to Baylor BYU that first weekend. That's going to be a lot. That's going to be a really, really interesting game to kind of look at. Now, if you look at that BYU team, and if they beat Baylor, wow, then that Big 12 is going to be so interesting to watch. I mean, as the season rolls along, I mean, you look at the ACC matchups between like a Boston College team going up against a Virginia Tech team, but the one that I'm circling is Arizona State, Oklahoma State. That one should be a lot of fun. Arizona State, with all the infractions that they faced over the offseason, all the drama and stuff like that, taking on an Oklahoma State team that, frankly has a lot to prove this year. So let's see. I think those are really exciting. I love the fact that you mentioned the Notre Dame one. That one's a huge, huge game. So a lot of good ones in that opening week.
What about you, Andrew?
I'm going to be out of town and unable to watch any games for the most part. I think we're going to have somebody with a phone on for the OU game, so it'll be on, but I'll be playing an event that day, so I won't be able to watch much week 1, but that Ohio State Notre Dame game is going to be ugly.
Oh yeah. It's going to be interesting because I feel like Marcus Freeman is going to be able to scheme something up to try to stop, but they're going to have to be patient and slow as hell because they can't get in a they can't run and gun with.
This Ohio State offense is the closest thing we'll have seen since LSU 2019. I'm not going to say that that's the level that they are going to be at, but that's going to be the closest thing we will have seen since then to that.
At wide receiver, Jackson Smith-Njigba is like one of the best receivers I've seen in a long time. I am so bullish on him. He is my favorite. I'm not even a CJ Stroud fan, but I'm just so much of a fan of him.
Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, come on.
What a name.
I'm a Colts fan, so like I'm big fan of this guy.
I think like I said, Notre Dame's going to have to slow that game down. I talked to my uncle. He said, "Hey, where's that game being played at?" I said, "Uncle, I think it's being played in at the Shoe." And he was like, "There's no way. If I'm Notre Dame, I don't care who. Yeah, it's a neutral site game for me. There's no way." So I was looking. I was like, "Oh, that's and it's a night game too."
Oregon went in there and beat them last year,
but that wasn't a night game at the Shoe though. So
wasn't it night?
No, it was in the daytime.
Okay. I mean, either way, like, night game, day game can be different as far as environment goes. Yeah. But, I mean, we know what Ohio State's defense ended up being last year. Now, they have some talent there, but I think Jim Knowles is going to be – they don't have to be incredible on defense. They just have to be decent with that offense that they have. So, I fully expect Ohio State to blow through their whole schedule and make the playoffs this year.
I think that Florida State and LSU game will be interesting. It's the do or die for one coach, and then it's the hey, let me reintroduce myself. I'm Brian Kelly, right? You know, that's kind of it's an introduction phase, and then it's it's either now or never for the Florida State coach. Is it Norvell? I believe it's Norvell.
Yeah, it's Norvell.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's going to be an interesting matchup, and that's a Sunday game as well. So we'll get football then. I think some other games to look out for. Clemson and Georgia Tech. I think that should be a blowout, but at the same time, you're interested to see what is Dabo like without Brent and Tony Elliott. Then also you want to see DJ. Has DJ Uiagalelei, has he improved? Is he going to be the starter for the rest of the year? Does he kind of, quiet people, or does he quiet the fans and their fan base and then other fans around college football? Or is it more of the same?
I'm just happy to see Georgia Tech not running the triple option anymore, to be honest with you. Like, can you imagine? Wasn't it Calvin Johnson who went there? Like, imagine having Calvin Johnson on your team and running the triple option. Are you kidding me?
They did. They ran it a lot, but I believe the quarterback, his name was Ball.
Well, they don't run it anymore. They got a new coach who doesn't run it anymore. That's what I'm saying. Like, but when they had an insane NFL roster full of skill positions, and they ran the triple option and just didn't use any of it.
Hey, some honorable mentions real quick, guys. That Utah Florida game should be interesting. And
yes.
How about that? You know what? Another one that we overlooked is Oregon, Georgia.
Oh yeah, that is yeah. That Oregon Georgia game is going to tell you a lot. Adrian, I gotta hear it. Does Bo Nix start the first game of the season?
Oh man, that's a great question. I honestly want to say no. I haven't thrown any hot takes out there, so let's just say no. Let's say he's not the starter. Yeah, that's a real interesting one right there. I'm really excited about that matchup. Also with Georgia, just to see who they have coming back and everything like that off the national championship. A lot of hype around that organization, the SEC stronghold right now. Who's going to take the crown? Just a lot of interesting storylines going into those two.
I think Georgia's undefeated going into Atlanta. Their defense is still stacked. They lost a lot of dudes, but people don't realize what they had sitting on the bench that was not playing or got a little bit of PT, and they are good. And here's the other thing too, their schedule is very soft. I think their toughest game is at Kentucky.
Oh.
Because they get Tennessee at home. So their toughest game is is Oregon, and at Kentucky.
Wow.
I'm not a believer in Will Levis. I'll say this: Tennessee may be a tough out for them. Here's
No,
two
but
other
they
games.
get it at home though. So like
Yeah.
when you're talking about like Tennessee at home versus Kentucky on the road, I'll take Kentucky being the tougher game of the two, but I still think they win both of them handily.
Here's a game that I think that Adrian will appreciate: Houston at UTSA.
Good one. It's a really good opening week matchup, but I'm still really high on that Cougars team. I think they bring a lot of really good players. I'm still taking Houston in that one right there. I sound like the anti-UTSA guy right now, but I love what Clayton Tune has to bring to the table. He's just one of those dynamic quarterbacks who might be even one of the best quarterbacks in all the state of Texas. If you really look at it from a statewide perspective, might be one of the best quarterbacks and gunslingers in Texas, and they're going to need to really elevate their game. I'm looking at teams like Houston who are going to join the Big 12 in the future. Those are the programs who are going to really need to elevate their game and prove that they're a Power 5 caliber.
Can you imagine BYU beating Baylor this year and then joining the Big 12 next?
Crown of Big 12 champions, right?
Oh my gosh, we'd have another UCF on our hands.
Before I let you guys, before I let both of you guys go, let's just speed through these last few. Just tell me who you got. West Virginia at Pittsburgh.
Oh, give me West Virginia.
Yeah, I think I'm taking West Virginia as well. Although I'm not down on Pitt.
All right. Cincinnati at Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Yeah, I'm going with Arkansas.
Now, Cincinnati, they did lose a lot, but they actually recruited fairly well, and they've been proven to develop very well as well. So, like, they're not going to be a slouch.
Yeah.
But I definitely think Arky, man, they have an insanely difficult schedule. But don't be shocked to see them win 9-10 games.
Here's another one real quick. Penn State at Purdue.
Penn State.
Yeah, I'm going the Nittany Lions.
I don't know, y'all. I think that didn't Purdue lose that wide. If Purdue lost that wide receiver, I'm definitely going to Penn State.
I think they did. I think he went drafted.
Yeah,
I think he got drafted. Yeah. That kid right there, in every game that you are like, there's no way that he's going to burn.
I am not a believer in James Franklin.
Yeah,
but they are talented, and I don't believe in Purdue.
All right, last game here. Let's talk about. You guys just mentioned it. Utah at Florida. I got to go with Anthony Richardson and the boys. I like Coach Napier. I think that if he lets, this is the best quarterback that he's ever coached. And
I'll take Utah. Why not? I'll take Utah.
Wow.
So I'm torn on this, and here's why. I think Utah's the better team. But going into the swamp, there is no way for those dudes to prepare to play in that kind of heat and that kind of humidity. That's a major concern. And it's also the swamp. It's a new head coach. So there's going to be loads of excitement. That crowd is going to be insane. We know how hard the swamp is to play in. So I think that this is actually a coin flip game. It could go either way. I'll be pulling for Utah, but I think Florida is very capable of winning this game. And if I had to pick it, I think I'm still picking Utah. No, I'm taking Florida. I'm not an AR believer. But I think the environment and the weather is going to be too big of a factor for Utah. I think come fourth quarter, they'll be tired.
Well, you guys heard it there. I am so happy to have you guys on here. Thankful for you guys agreeing to come on here early. Adrian, we'll let you go. But Adrian, go ahead and plug every show that you're on and everything that you do. That way everybody can find you.
Thank you guys for having me. You can just follow me on Twitter at Adrian Broadus. Check out my work. All the links are in my bio. It's just krod.com, 600ESPNElPaso.com. Do daily shows from 4 o'clock to 7 here in El Paso, and then host the post-game show for UTEP football and UTEP basketball, Minor Talk.
We'll definitely have to have you back on eventually. Well, maybe after the UTEP game. So for better or for worse, so we'll have you back on. But we'll let you go ahead and go. And hey, I appreciate you so much for coming on to the show.
I appreciate both of you guys. Great job. And I can't wait to talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Andrew.
All right, Andrew, let everybody know where they can find you. Anything OU podcast. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, so my Twitter @'s the Sooner Soup Guy, mostly on Spaces, but I do produce the Anything OU podcast. So you'll see me on there every now and then, but I'm mostly behind the scenes, kind of getting guests and doing things like that. But yeah, man, it's I really appreciate you having me on, and I always enjoy being on.
Oh, man, you're a friend of the show. Anytime. We need to have it to where it's me, you, and Seth on here soon. So
yeah, for sure.
With that said, yeah, for sure. With that said, everybody, you know what? We need to talk, because me, you, and Seth. Look, we can have the Twitter Spaces. That's great and all, but we need to have a show show some love to the softball team, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I plan on getting to as many of the fall games as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And Jackie and I have a lot of stuff kind of prepped for kind of discussions kind of leading up for a softball season. So we're going to do what we can to cover the softball team in the off season, getting ready for the year. But come springtime, it's going to be pretty much softball heavy. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. But with that being said, guys, hey, appreciate everybody that chimed in the chat. Like, subscribe, follow everybody on here, the whole panel. You guys know what it is. Hey, we'll see you guys soon. Next week, we'll come back with another episode, another guest. But hey, thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Adrian, as well, for coming on. We're out.